My name is Pamela D. Harris. I'm the Executive Director of North Newstead Association. As you may know, North Newstead Association is a community-based nonprofit organization located at 4601 Pope Avenue in North St. Louis City. We believe that familial and personal stability and security is essential to the resident engaged process and community empowerment. Though providing affordable housing and family support services to the area's low to moderate income residents, we can bring about economic well-being and equitable opportunity for all of St. Louisans, along with their families. As a culmination to our safety program, every year, North Newstead hosts a crime prevention summit to connect movers and shakers in the public safety realm of St. Louis to residents in our neighborhoods. And the purpose of today's summit is to connect and to learn from one another. And the best way that we can do that is by actively listening to one another and asking questions. And not only asking questions, but we get a chance to follow up with the dialogue. So we want to take this opportunity to thank you in advance for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us today as we learn about the Cure Violence program. Most of all, this activity is financed in part through an allocation of the Community Development Block Grant funds from the Development of Housing and Urban Development and the City of St. Louis Community Development Administration. With that being said, I'm going to introduce our first panelist today. And our first panelist is none other than St. Louis Police Chief John Hayden. Let's welcome him this morning. Thank you.
Good, thank you very much. No, I'm honored to be with you again this morning. I know we've done this a few years in a row, and this is always a good conversation and a good exchange of information. And so I won't prolong the matter because there may be some. I'll share some statistics with you, but then there may be some. Matter of fact, they have submitted. A few people have submitted some questions that I'll address, but there may be some more questions. So let's just talk a little bit about what's been going on. As you know, we've had a tremendous challenging year this summer in particular. So what I would tell you is that, hey, right now, St. Louis has 236 homicides. And I think that's really the most prevalent issue that we're challenged with. Interestingly enough, and that's about 60 more, a little over 60 more than what we had this time last year. So the first question that would come up is, what in the world happened to St. Louis, particularly when we were 5 homicides down on June the 1st. So what happened? So we had at the end of June, we were 10 homicides over, and you know, in June was the beginning of the George Floyd protests, and so we were challenged with that. The COVID situation was still going on, and what was unique about that is that of course that incident didn't happen in St. Louis. So it was just, the protests really didn't start. The civil unrest in St. Louis didn't stop until a couple of weeks ago at the election times. We haven't had much since then, but all summer long, we've had to expend resources on civil unrest. You know, a lot of times it's just not merely folk just marching down the street. I mean, we have to deal with some issues during civil unrest that whether it be not only traffic safety, but also, people tend to be a little, for lack of a better word, I'll say a little naughty during protest time. And so we have to protect folks' property. If folk try to get through, there's oftentimes some disturbances, if not some minor pushing and shoving or what have you. And so we've had to deal quite a bit with those things. But anyway, getting back to June, but interestingly enough, in July we had 53 homicides, and I would tell you that a lot of that, what thing that could be noticed was a lot more. Normally, you would say there's a lot more drug driven, and not a lot of drug related incidents. But what we noticed in July, that there was a lot more personal discord. There were a lot of people just not getting along. A lot of folk were arguing. A lot of people fighting over money or what have you. And so that's when our homicide situation really got arguably extremely challenging in July. So what really happened to what we're looking at right now is things were really challenging in July. Now I would tell you, you would say, oh, well, St. Louis is really in a bad situation. But I would tell you that, interestingly enough, across the country, I'm a member of the Major Cities Chiefs Association, and so what the Major Cities Chiefs would tell you is that 57 out of 67 major cities across the country also had increases in homicides, and ours is about 30%. And they would tell you 30 of those 57 were better than 30% increase in homicide. So this is not only a St. Louis thing. There was an explosion in violent what we call aggravated assault with firearms, resulting in homicides across the country. Now, criminologists are studying what happened. What was unique about this time of year, this year in 2020, and some of them are saying that, hey, the COVID situation, the desperation caused by COVID, the isolation caused by COVID, the anxiety caused by COVID, the shortness of fuses, those types of things are really going to be contributing factors to what we saw this summer. And so they'll be studying that. But I've heard criminology. We have our own in St. Louis, Dr. Rosenfeld out of UMSL. He speaks oftentimes in the Post-Dispatch about crime trends. And so we're not unique in St. Louis about what has happened with our response. Well, anyway, you all know that behind that, of course, once July was like that, Judge Edwards reached out and spoke with the U.S. Attorney Jeff Jensen, and we got some federal assistance with some help. They called it Operation Legend, and so they sent in about 50 Homeland Security investigators to assist us to ride in cars with our police officers. And so what was a really high rate in June and July of homicides turned out to be cut by 40% when you looked at August and September. And so we got things under control, but again, June and July were unlike anything else that we had seen in a long time, and now kind of normalcy is being restored. Now, I would tell you, so you say, well, what about other crimes? And so that would explain the aggravated assault with firearms, that would explain homicides. What about everything else? And thankfully, a lot of the other crime categories, which I'll share with you, are even down. So sexual assaults are down 15% citywide right now. Robberies are down 17% right now. I'm sorry, robberies are down 13%, which includes carjackings and other street robberies, but robberies total in St. Louis is down 13%. And so although we had an explosion with a lot of aggravated assault with firearms, St. Louis's person crime is up 4%. So you would think it would be up, way up. Homicides are up 30%, but overall person crime is up 4%. Burglaries are down citywide 17%. Larcenies are down citywide 8%. Vehicle theft, which I'll talk about a little bit, vehicle theft is up 7%, but I think I know the answer to that. So total property crime is down 7%. Total crime, St. Louis is down 4%. So those are the good news pieces, is that, crime is not totally out of control, but personal conflict between folk resulted in a lot of gun violence over the summer. It's really the skinny of it all. And so again, I mentioned the HSI or the federal assistance that we had, but of course our general, we've modified a few things. I added a sergeant and 6 detectives to our homicide division. I had to. We still go with our rectangle program. We did learn that particularly this summer, that a lot of the homicides weren't even occurring in traditional places, and so we had to add what we call mission zones, so we'd be able to rotate out of certain zones in order to address crime, violent crime trends that were not in traditional places. Like I said, this homicide thing was happening all over the city, and so we had to adjust our strategy to catch things that weren't usual. And again, let's say we had mission zones. We always have our Bureau of Specialized Enforcement, which includes our traffic safety, our mobile reserve, our SWAT team, our anti-crime team. They kind of track and investigate carjacking. So those are always in those areas that we are experiencing increases in violence. We always have those. We always have our federal partnerships, which includes partnerships with the FBI, the Drug Enforcement Agency, the U.S. Marshals, and the Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms. So we always have that as an ongoing piece. We are doing well with our distribution or our coverage of camera work. I know somebody asked a question about camera, but we continue to put out strategic surveillance, which assists in a lot of investigation. You've seen a lot of pictures and video from a lot of crimes that occurred. That's because we have our real-time crime center is expanding. And then, of course, I'm sure you'll talk about a little bit more. Will's going to talk about it. Cure Violence is a new piece that we are supporting 100% because we do believe that we cannot make enough arrests to stop this. Again, I mentioned the personal nature of a lot of homicides over the summer. You can't just, I can't stop people from arguing. I can't stop people from meeting each other. I know a lot of times you wake up in the morning and say, wow, there were 2 or 3 homicides overnight, 2 people killed at once. I hate to report this to you, but a lot of that is drug related. There is no such thing as a safe drug arrest. I mean, a drug exchange. People think, well, I can just go to a drug sales. Hey, in times like these when people are out of work, hey, there's no such thing as a safe drug sale. So if somebody's waiting for somebody in an alley to get some drugs, and sometimes it's not going to be a sale at all, it's going to be a robbery. And if you don't produce the money that you were going to buy drugs with right away, then it's going to be a different situation that you have. And so, like I said, again, a lot of things working together. The Operation Legend still continues. And so even though some of those Homeland Security investigators have left, we still have the support of added officers to each one of those federal agencies that I mentioned. And so St. Louis is still getting a lot of federal assistance with dealing with our crime, but hopefully a lot of work that we've done this fall will carry over. The investment that we've made this fall will carry over into 2021, and 2021 promises to be a much safer St. Louis for you. But 2020 has been very challenging all the way around. There's no doubt about that.
Okay, so let's all give Chief Hayden a round of applause for his information gathered today and share it with us. We also have Mr. Wilford Pickney. Mr. Wilford Pickney Jr. is the Mayor's Office Director of Children, Youth, and Families, with the singular purpose of making sure St. Louis children have the support and resources needed to lead productive and successful lives. He has worked in the criminal justice sector, promoting safety, education, and policy development and training for 28 plus years. He is currently a doctoral candidate in political science at CUNY Graduate Center, where he specializes in public policy and American politics. So without further ado, let's welcome Mr. Wilford Pickney. Thank you.
So thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here and have this conversation. I'm going to give like a general overview of Cure Violence. I know Sal is here, and I know James Clark will be here to talk specifically about the site, so I don't want to take their thunder. And then I'll talk a little bit about the chief when he responded or was talking about a response to the question around mental health. I'll talk about that a little bit at the end, because I think it's important to understand that all these efforts represent a multi-pronged effort. There's no one response to violence. There's no one response to crime. And there's a lot of efforts going on around the scene, behind the scenes, and now coming to light to provide support not only to the department, but more importantly to people in the community as it relates to violence and crime. And so, oftentimes we're put in a box where it's this either or conversation. We can't allow that to happen. This is a both and conversation where we do need multiple strategies, and those strategies will then allow the police to be more visible, which is important in fighting crime, and to more effectively address violent crime. So, and when we think about Cure Violence, I think it's important to understand that this is a national program. It's a program that's focused on what is described as a public health response to violence, which means we're looking at people as individuals, we're looking at root causes, and we're trying to address the factors that lead people to engage in crime, right? And so Cure Violence has 3 pillars, which I'm sure Sal and James will talk about. But Cure Violence has 3 pillars. One is detecting and interrupting conflicts. One is identifying and treating the highest risk individuals. And one is changing social norms. So when we think about the first pillar is probably the most important, and what Sal and James will really talk about. It is about detecting and interrupting conflicts. The chief talked about how a lot of crime and a lot of the violence that's happening in St. Louis is personal, right? It's people who are in arguments, people who have personal conflicts, emotions get heightened, and in the heat of the moment, and in conjunction with the lax gun laws here, we have violent incidents. And so the real key pillar of it to me is getting people out on the street who are from the community, who know many of the people who may often engage in these acts of violence, and having them engage the violence perpetrators, about the people who are engaging in violence, to either prevent conflicts or retaliation because something has happened, or to after a violent incident has happened, to really try and identify people and say, hey, this is not the way to respond, to learn about that individual, right? Because Cure Violence is one of the many interventions that focuses on individuals, right? So we're not just looking at a crime and a criminal event. And so they'll talk about the violence interrupters. They get out there and they engage people, not just post-violence, but also pre-violence. Then they do identify what we deem as high-risk individuals, right? And oftentimes, when we think about this, especially in the public health lens, it's around social determinants of health. People, we all have certain factors that dictate our ability to be successful and survive. Being able to pay our rent, being able to feed ourselves and our children, being able to pay our utility bills, having a job. These are all social determinants of health. And if those factors, if people are unstable in any of these areas, we all know then that creates other challenges in their life. So Cure Violence in this public health lens is talking about, once we identify people, once we engage with people, once we try and, once we're looking to create an atmosphere where people don't need to respond and retaliate, we need to help support them and help stabilize them in areas that may dictate their engaging in this activity. So when we think about those high-risk individuals, that's how we want to think about them. We put these labels on people, so I don't want to label people in terms of that term, high-risk individuals. We just need to engage with our community and the people who live in our community, see them as individuals, and find ways to support them and prop them up. And then the last pillar is really about changing social norms. Well, the main social norm is how we think about violence and how we think we should respond to people who engage in violence. The chief talked about not being able to arrest our way out of it. That's part of the broader conversation around reform in the criminal justice system. Well, we all have to think about that, because a lot of times our first response to some people who engage in criminal activity is to lock them up. Well, locking them up, as we see over the last 20, 30, 40 years, doesn't necessarily stop violence. And so how can we change our thinking? Not in every case. There are people who unfortunately need to be locked up and need to be separated from the rest of us, at least for a period of time, because of their behavior. But there are many people, and the majority of people that the police department comes in contact with, not only here, but in other areas, aren't those people. And we also see the effects of trauma. Trauma was already mentioned. The building effects of trauma on people over their lifetime leads people to engage in activities. So we can intervene early on when the initial traumatic events happen. I mean, let's look at children. Children were mentioned. We know what's been going on with children in the city of St. Louis over the last year. I've been in St. Louis 2 years. Last summer was horrible. This summer is not any better. Well, those children who are victims of trauma, either because they live in a household where a bullet is flown through the window or through the wall, they're riding in a car and they're witnessing violence, whether there's family violence going on. Well, if that trauma isn't treated, then we ultimately aren't stopping violence from happening 5, 10 years down the road. No child is born a bad person. I know we may have 12-year-olds committing carjackings and all that. They weren't born like that. They weren't taught to be that way. They didn't learn that in school. Oftentimes it's a fact of built up trauma. And why are we waiting until the trauma's gotten so bad that now they are engaging in acts like carjackings and shootings? And now we have no choice but maybe to respond through the criminal justice system. And I know the police department's not looking for that to be the case. They would rather that not be the case. So those three pillars are important. I know Sal and James will talk about that, but that is the focus of Cure Violence. So one of the challenges we're having with Cure Violence and many interventions is how do we get information out in the community? I've been to many VCR, Vision for Children at Risk community cafes and parent cafes, and I've been out in the community. And one of the things that strikes me is that we put things on social media. There's articles in the St. Louis American and the Riverfront Chimes and the Post-Dispatch. There's many ways in which information is being communicated, but then you get into the really grassroots, you sit in a room with people from the community, they don't know what's going on. So how do we all work together to better communicate what's happening in the community? So one of the things that happened with Cure Violence was there was a steering committee that was created. And this steering committee is made up of people from the community from multiple facets, people who work in the healthcare system within the community, people from community organizations like SLACO and Walnut Park Community Association, people from like myself, maybe representing government agencies, people from other community organizations, FQHCs, the Federally Qualified Health Centers, people from youth involved organizations, the Violent Prevention Commission. These people all come together to help assist the health department, who is the entity within the city that received the money for Cure Violence. This group of people is looking to help with planning, with implementation of the program, and with evaluation of the program to make sure that there is community engagement so we can hear directly from the community how the program is going and give that information and make sure that information gets back to the people who need it, such as the people running the sites, the Employment Connections and the Urban League. They also help with monitoring outcomes and determining where neighborhood and community readiness assessments are, right? Are the communities ready for new sites? Hopefully the Cure Violence will expand. Well, this steering committee meets monthly. Like I said, they work directly with the health department, and they are working directly with the sites to say, how can we help you get this information out in the community so that the community knows what's going on firsthand and keep that line of communication open. And I'm sure Sal and James will talk about that. What are your service areas in the city of St. Louis for Cure Violence? Well, we have Wells Goodfellow Hamilton Heights, which is being overseen and implemented by Employment Connections. Mr. Martinez will talk about that. They have an office at 5502, 5504 Natural Bridge. I've been there. They already are doing a lot in the community, and Sal will talk about that. Employment Connections also will be running the site in Dutchtown, which isn't up and running yet, but they are hiring staff and doing training, and Sal will talk about that. Their office will be located at 3207 Merrimack Avenue. And then we have the Walnut Park East location, which will be run by the Urban League. And I believe Alderwoman Boyd already put it in there, but their office will be at 6050 Goodfellow. So we have these three service areas, which were identified through crime stats, because this is a data-driven decision-making process, right? We want to make sure these interrupters and these organizations are in the communities that have violence and have the most violence, or at least at the time that the decision was made. And the data is constantly being reviewed. So they do work with the police department to get that data. And so those sites, the Wells Goodfellow site has been up since June, and Sal will talk about where they are. But these sites were chosen in that way and are constantly being reevaluated. The steering committee is planning an event to introduce itself to the community and make sure the community knows who they are, so that you not only have Sal and James to reach out to, but you also have these other community partners who you may be more familiar with, may be more comfortable speaking with, but so that you'll know who they are and what they do. This is a community-centered public health approach, Cure Violence. So it is important to have the community involved. And I would say especially, and I know that the steering committee and Sal and James are trying to make sure this happens, but have youth engagement. We all know, as I said already, about the experience of youth in our city with violence. They are one of the most well-positioned group of people to talk to and learn from about how Cure Violence needs to work and whether it is working or not. And so they will be talking about that, and we will be working hard to make sure that youth voice is incorporated into Cure Violence. So Let me sort of segue, because Cure Violence is a tool, is a piece of violence prevention. It is not a cure-all. So if people think Cure Violence is going to roll out and then everything's going to be fine and it's all going to be great, I think we're putting too much pressure on Sal and James and the Urban League and Employment Connections and the community itself. So there's multiple things that are going on. Somebody mentioned or asked about mental health. So Cure Violence has the interrupters. They do have a piece where they try and connect people to community services, but there are other things that we've been working on since January of last year, since I personally have been working on with community partners to think about how do we engage people as a community, and how does the police department, who oftentimes, because we pick up the phone to call 911, is that entity that first comes in contact with people who are engaged in violence or in mental health. So we've been working on, and we are launching a program. It was in the news a couple of weeks ago in conjunction with Behavioral Health Response, which is the entity that runs the crisis hotline. They've been in the community since 1994. There's two facets to our relationship with Behavioral Health Response. This money is once again flowing through the health department because it needs to have a public health lens. So one is called 911 call diversion. We have worked with and built out a protocol, and I'll continue to build out protocols where if someone calls 911 personally, because they may not be feeling themselves and they have a behavioral health issue related to mental health or substance use, and it's not appropriate for the police to respond because that's not where their expertise is in, they will be transferred to the crisis line, to the BHR crisis line. And a crisis worker will engage that person, which is something they already do as part of their everyday work, to resolve their situation, hopefully. If their situation requires that someone come face to face with them, a clinician, a licensed mental health, behavioral health clinician, then that will happen because we will be able to initiate a mobile response to that person. And this is an important step because, as we all know, I mean, around the country, I'm a former police officer. Oftentimes, if police show up to these types of scenes, they can end in a way that is not beneficial to the community member. And unfortunately, at times have ended up in loss of life, right? Just because police aren't equipped to handle that. That is not their job. That's not their expertise. So that part of the program will really drive people who call 911 personally and have those types of needs. And now if you call 911 for someone else, that's a little bit of a different response. So we will have what is called a co-response. This is being done all around the country where we have clinicians, oftentimes the social workers, peer support people riding in cars with police. And so we've built that out as well. It's not necessarily a primary response because the first concern of the police is safety, right? We want to make sure we live in, unfortunately, a state, as we said, with lax gun laws. We want to make sure that someone doesn't show up and their life is in danger because someone's on the scene with a weapon and they're posing a danger to themselves or others in the community. But we will have these cars where they can be a secondary response, right? So they can listen to the calls and know that this sounds like a call that may involve somebody with a behavioral health need, or maybe someone who's just been the victim of some type of trauma and are best suited to be seen or at least be able to talk to someone, a licensed clinical social worker or a peer support person. So these cars will be out. They will respond to these types of situations either proactively or they can be called to the scene by officers from the department. The program will involve training and trauma for police officers, and these clinicians will be speaking to officers, and we already are in partnership with the police department and many behavioral health partners to make sure we build out training so officers will know how to do this. We have piloted this program starting late last year up until right until COVID started. So we already have experience in the 6th district with this program, but the program will be citywide. And then the other thing I would mention in terms of mental health is that the police department, not many people know about this, applied for last year a Bureau of Justice Assistance grant through the Department of Justice called the Justice Mental Health Collaboration Grant. And what that meant was the department was going to step back and look at how they do engage with people with mental health and co-occurring substance use disorders, and look at their protocols, partner with people in the community who provide services to make sure that they have protocols that were going to ensure that those interactions were successful to the benefit of the person calling, the client, the consumer. And so the department has been in conjunction with, and I've been leading meetings around all of these things, in conjunction with Places for People, in conjunction with the St. Louis Mental Health Board, the Violence Prevention Commission, in conjunction with the continuum of care around housing and security. We've been talking with all these people to see and work with the department to make sure they develop protocols that will be effective and safe for those when they call. But I will say this is also about trauma. So I mentioned social determinants of health before. So it's not just about responding to people with mental health, because there's different levels of acuity with mental health. You have people who are outwardly showing and maybe at a heightened sense of acuity, and that presents certain challenges. But we also have people who may have those challenges, but they're not acute and can be triggered by actions of police or anyone else. And then we also have people who are victims and who are traumatized, as I said, by whatever crime or actions they may have been a part of, who also need help as those social determinants of health around food, around housing, around work, and so many different areas. So these programs are meant to address all of those things because we did a arrest analysis with the police department last year, and we found most of the people that the police engage with are not the serious drivers of crime, but people who have the needs that I'm talking about.
So we want to give Mr. Pickney a round of applause for all of the great information shared. I have the pleasure of introducing our next speaker, Mr. Sal Martinez. Sal Martinez was appointed to the position of CEO of Employment Connection in November of 2018 after a distinguished career in place-based community development. Employment Connection's mission is to assist individuals with limited opportunities to self-sufficiency, and it currently serves thousands of clients on an annual basis, including justice-involved individuals, single mothers with children, military veterans, and the unhoused. Sal Martinez also serves on a number of civic boards, including St. Louis Housing Authority, Civil Rights Enforcement Agencies, North Newstead Association, Hamilton Heights Neighborhood Association, and the Community Builders Network. So without saying anything else, we're going to introduce to some and make known to others, none other than Sal Martinez.
Thank you, Pam. Thank you, Constance. That was quite an introduction. Our Cure Violence program, of course, represents a partnership between Employment Connection, the Department of Health, and Cure Violence Global, which is an international organization. We provide a number of wraparound services for our clients. Most people know us for our ability to recruit and provide job training and job placement services for our clients, but we provide a number of other services for our clients. For example, right now, as we navigate through this pandemic, we are providing a significant number of families with both eviction prevention services, meaning rental assistance, mortgage assistance, utility assistance, to keep them from being evicted, while also providing housing placement services for members of our community who are currently, unfortunately, unhoused. We also provide on-site mental and behavioral health counseling for our clients who need it. We also provide transportation assistance, clothing assistance, access to food and other quality of life items. We try to be as much of a one-stop shop for our clients as we can be, because typically when they come through our doors, either physically or now virtually because of COVID, they are in crisis mode. And so the last thing that we want to do is turn them around and tell them that they have to go to 10 other places to access the services that they need. So we have been selected to launch 2 of the 3 Cure Violence sites that the city has selected. It's important to note that Cure Violence in St. Louis is not a city-wide program. That is a misconception that a lot of people and stakeholders have, but the reality is that it has only been launched in 3 neighborhood clusters as far as phase 1 of the program goes. I think Will mentioned that we hope to expand this program into other neighborhoods in the city of St. Louis. But again, just 3 neighborhood clusters are currently enrolled in the Cure Violence program, if you will. So the first site that we launched incorporates parts of both the Wells Goodfellow and Hamilton Heights neighborhood. So here is a map of the Wells Goodfellow neighborhood. Those are the wards that encompass both neighborhoods, those orange numbers that you see on the map. These maps were taken from the city of St. Louis's planning department. So these are available online for anybody who is interested. So what is Cure Violence? And we'll talk a little bit about this. The founder of Cure Violence, Dr. Gary Slutkin, is an epidemiologist, which the irony of that is certainly not lost on me as we all navigate through this COVID-19 era. But it looks at gun violence as through a health lens. So the characteristics, clustering, spread, transmission, sounds very familiar as we go through, again, life with COVID-19. There are some old approaches, and then there are some new scientific approaches that Dr. Slutkin and his team have come up with. You'll see the old approaches on the left, making judgments about individuals, labeling individuals as bad individuals, looking and focusing on gangs and imprisonment, incarceration. So on the right are the principles that Dr. Slutkin and his team have come up with as it relates to the implementation of Cure Violence. Again, looking at it from a health and scientific standpoint, understanding why individuals behave the way that they do, why do they make the decisions that they make, which lead to gun violence, trying to change the norms in the community, certain behaviors, and then again, trying to intervene and prevent gun violence from spreading. The Cure Violence approach, and we'll talk a little bit about this, detecting and interrupting conflicts with a specific focus on gun violence. Our Cure Violence staff members are not law enforcement officers. They are specifically focusing on reducing gun violence by engaging high-risk individuals. And as part of their work, they are connecting these high-risk individuals to supportive services that they may need so that we can at least offer them the opportunity to change their behaviors. One of the other things that's very interesting about the Cure Violence approach is that you focus on a 10 block by 10 block catchment area. And so even though we will respond to shootings outside of the 10 block catchment area within, for example, the Wells, Goodfellow, and Hamilton Heights neighborhoods, our primary focus is a 10 block by 10 block area that has been identified by the police department, the health department, and the Department of Public Safety as being the area that has the highest concentration of shootings. And so the health department has provided us with heat maps and other data to show that this 10 block area is the area that we should be focusing on right now. Now that catchment area can change. It's already changed for us in the Wells, Goodfellow, Hamilton Heights neighborhood as the data is constantly being collected, I should say. So what are high-risk individuals according to the Cure Violence model? These are individuals ages 16 to 25, individuals who are recently have been released from prison. These are individuals who have been recently shot or are close to someone who has been shot. These are individuals that are active in street gangs or cliques. These are individuals that have a history of violence against other people. We call these individuals justice involved. These are known shooters, individuals who carry firearms. I will tell you that on almost a daily basis, particularly our Wells, Goodfellow, Hamilton Heights team, they encounter individuals that have firearms almost on a daily basis. And I'm talking high artillery, military grade weapons. And then number 7, of course, these are individuals that are engaged in high risk activity, whatever that might be. These high risk individuals are they're not strangers to us. About half of the clients that we work with on an annual basis are justice involved. So our team in the Wells Goodfellow Hamilton Heights cluster, our site manager is Darren Seals, who many of you may know from his work with the Sankofa organization in Walnut Park. Darren has been doing conflict mediation and de-escalation work with high-risk individuals for many, many years. And so we were very, very excited to bring him to the Employment Connection team. He leads a team of an outreach supervisor, multiple violence interrupters, and outreach workers. Most of the individuals on this team either live in Wells Goodfellow or Hamilton Heights or have very close ties to high-risk individuals in these two neighborhoods. This is very unconventional work. This is very dangerous work. Their typical work schedule is Tuesday through Thursday from 2 p.m. to 11 p.m., 3 p.m. to midnight on Fridays and Saturdays. So, and several members of both teams, just like here at our headquarters, are justice involved. Several members of our Wells Goodfellow Hamilton Heights team have been previously shot. So we've been very intentional about trying to identify and hire individuals that truly have credibility, that have lived experiences that are very similar to the high-risk individuals that they will be working with. The violence interrupters and outreach workers both provide de-escalation, conflict mediation services. The one difference, though, is that the outreach workers are expected to carry a caseload of 15 individuals that they are ultimately connecting to the comprehensive wraparound services, either that we provide here at Employment Connection or that some of our community partners provide. And so they are to monitor those individuals and report on outcomes for those individuals. And at the end game, of course, would be that we would be redirecting individuals to live civic, law-abiding lives. But of course, we need to give them the resources and support and opportunities to do that. As Will mentioned, our office is at 5502 through 04 Natural Bridge. This is a property that is essentially owned by the Hamilton Heights Neighborhood Association, but we welcome visitors. You can give us a call, 333-5627, and we can transfer you to either site if you would like to talk to any of the staff members. Later in July, we were awarded the second site, which was in Dutchtown. It's a very densely populated neighborhood in the city of St. Louis, has a lot of great amenities. Our team there, it's headed up by Ms. Danae Reynolds, who has a long, rich background in nonprofit management. So she's doing a terrific job. Those are a few members of the team. And so our office in Dutchtown is located at the Neighborhood Innovation Center. Some of you may remember this used to be a Midwest Bank Center location. It's on Merrimack, just off of South Compton. Our site manager, Ms. Reynolds, typically works Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. And then the outreach supervisor and the violence interrupters and outreach workers then work that unconventional schedule that I mentioned earlier. If you're really passionate, if you want to make a difference in your community, if you are looking to be out in the neighborhoods, engaging high-risk individuals, then this could be an opportunity for you. This is not a desk job. So that will conclude my remarks.
So with that, I'm going to let you know that James Clark is a Vice President of Public Safety and Community Response with the Urban League of Metropolitan St. Louis. He oversees their pandemic response, their Serving Our Streets initiative, their urban opioid triage, their cure violence work, their clean sweep work, and their gun violence de-escalation network. So without further ado, we're going to welcome Mr. James Clark. Let's give him a hand and thank him for arriving.
I want to thank you all for inviting me. Our work with the Cure Violence model is very exciting. I am so excited to be working with my good friend, Sal Martinez over at Employment Connections. I know that they're doing an outstanding job there. And then I know that St. Louis is really waiting on the cure violence model to really take a hold. It is going to take a little while longer. We are waiting to be trained here in Walnut Park, as Sal is waiting to be trained by the cure violence team in his Dutchtown neighborhood. But I can say this without any degree of hesitation: the cure violence model is exactly what St. Louis needs to reduce the number of shootings in our more challenged neighborhoods. And let me tell you why. It's very simple. The cure violence model focuses on a very a defined area, about a 10-block area, very manageable parcel, very manageable. It doesn't take all of North St. Louis into account. It takes a very manageable swath of land. That's a good way to approach crime. You don't approach crime from a broad base, you approach crime localized at the neighborhood level. Then cure violence takes the subject matter experts. It takes the people who know crime and violence the best, those who once participated in crime and violence. We've approached this issue of crime and violence from a 3,000-foot level. We've studied it, we've analyzed it, we have then heaped it on the police department to solve. I read a quote recently that said, "The weather has a bigger impact on crime and violence than the police do." The weather has a bigger impact on crime and violence than the police do. So it's time for us to shift off of expecting the police to solve crime and violence. They show up after something occurs. It's simple logic, very, very simple logic. The cure violence model takes the subject matter experts, former gang members, former drug dealers, men and women who have paid their debt to society, who know the mentality of the people out there packing the pistols. They know the mentality. They know the behavior. They know the mentality. They know the subculture. And as Sal has probably learned by now, they know the shooters. The staff that we hire know the people that are out there packing the pistols. That's who we need to, we should have invested in cure violence 15 years ago. And St. Louis would not be in the condition that it's in right now. Will it remedy our violence problem overnight? No, it will not. Will we get strong outcomes in a short term? I bet my life on it. Now, this is where we have to focus. Right now, it's active in 3 neighborhoods in the city. It's active in 3 neighborhoods: Walnut Park, Dutchtown, and Wells Goodfellow. It should be in 12 neighborhoods in the city. It should be in 12 city neighborhoods. It should be in 6 county neighborhoods, and it should be in 5 neighborhoods over in East St. Louis. Crime and violence is mobile. It moves. We've got to scale it up. And if we can scale it up right now, if we can scale it up, if we can get the investment right now during this cold season, if we can get St. Louis to say, we will invest and make it and take it to 12 neighborhoods in the city, 6 neighborhoods in the county, and 5 neighborhoods over in East St. Louis, we will become more like Denver and less like Chicago. Crime and violence is ravishing St. Louis because St. Louis has refused for too many years to invest in it at the neighborhood level. This is a neighborhood crisis. It's a neighborhood crisis and it's a family crisis. The only way we're going to address this is to be in the neighborhoods, on the front porch, and in the living room. Neighborhood, front porch, and living room. And that's why I'm sold out 100% on the Cure Violence model. Now, after we get the guys, after we get the team trained, we've got to be able to plug them in with resources. The best way to stop a bullet is a job, flat out. We can't go out there and talk to them and get them excited if we cannot help them become gainfully employed, get their warrants lifted, help their families with utility bills, and get some of the social service resources that they need. Over at Employment Connections, they will be able to get people jobs. Here at the Urban League, through our Save Our Sons program, we will be able to get people jobs. So I'm excited. This is the most excited that I've ever been in all my years of public service, all of my years. The Cure Violence model will save lives, and it will give St. Louis the best path forward out of our downward spiral.
We want to say thank you again. And if you are in need of any services of North Newstead, because we do have programs that we administer, which is a beautification program. If you want to get your neighborhoods cleaned up, if it's any one of our 21 neighborhoods, of course. We also doing minor home repairs for seniors 62 and older, or if they have an elderly resident in their home. We have our elderly services. We also have our safety initiative, which today's presentation was a part of that. And we will never, ever, ever forget our landlord training, which we collaborate with the Tower Grove CDC, as well as the Vacancy Collaborative. We thank you so much for your time, and we hope that we all will become a better city of St. Louis. So thank you, thank you, thank you.